Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is Patrick Lovell, truth bombing, on the evening of Thursday, March 30th, 2022, at 9 p.m. my time. Boy, so many huge things happened today. I was so excited because Major League Baseball, opening day. Can you believe it? I mean, it's snowing in my neck of the woods, and baseball in springtime is here. What? Did I miss something? What did I miss? Something regarding an indictment of a former president? So, look, I can't believe that I dropped my truth bomb on the New York Times today, and I got I just did a short one. I did like a 6-minute video, and I did it like an hour before the New York Times actually dropped the news of the indictment of Donald Trump. But it was funny because I got quite a bit more action on that post because I think I said in my log line something along the lines of the the New York Times is dumping on you like you're a fool or something. They're treating you like you're a fool or something like that. And I have a feeling a lot of people thought that I might be taking the side of Donald Trump with that one. meanwhile, meanwhile, you can't make this up. I was actually trying to get your attention to this incredible propaganda platform of the nation's paper of record, who Donald Trump obviously famously quipped was fake news because of their fake news regarding Jamie Dimon, CEO, that they're propping up as a hero for the bailout of Republic Bank, New Republic Bank, and I think I called it Signature Bank earlier. My apologies for that typo in my braino. But, you know, I mean, you really can't make any of this stuff up because I really have to hand it to the Don. I really, if I ever get a chance to meet Donald Trump, I got to thank him because just based on the ludicrousness of this guy's insane, bloviating, walking joke that he literally is this ultimate expression of everything that I'm revealing to you, only in so much that the mainstream media and millions upon millions of people are fixated on Donald Trump and the indictment, which, I mean, it's big news, and the stuff that Donald's in the mix of is big news. But, just in case, unfortunately, some of you thought that I was a Trump supporter because of my headline earlier, not remotely. I think Donald Trump is guilty of everything that I see him being investigated for, and so much more that we don't have a clue of what he's done. What we're seeing is just what he knows he's done, and it's all amazing. But I took some notes today because the other night I've been kind of on this I don't know a little bit of a dead door bounce, if you will, from last week when I basically compared and contrast what Donald Trump is being convicted of or indicted on, and all of the different investigations into everything that he's involved with, and then I compared it with what I have on Wall Street, and I mean it's just remarkable that I've got 531 subscribers and followers, and I appreciate you guys, but I need 13 million. I mean, I am literally the only guy that's going to tell you these truths in the context of everything that's going on. So if you could please like and subscribe, if you could please share, somehow, some way, this to me, this moment underscores everything that I've been revealing to you for years now, and I've been working towards. But in an ironic twist of fate, I can't get the truth to the millions of people that need to hear it because of this insane, overwhelming wall of noise that all of this is, except for it just tees up like I'm on a par 5 open fairway. Just I'm gonna launch this thing 500 yards right down the middle because it's that easy compared to everything that's going on. So let me just kind of give you some reflections on the notes that I took through all the coverage, because ultimately, like I said, Donald Chump, Chumpstain, I need to thank him for being the deliverer of the mother of all irony. I mean, look, uh, what I just witnessed tonight, and justifiably so. I mean, I did a little bit of channel surfing between all of the major online echo chamber media entertainment platforms, from Fox and CNN to MSNBC. I didn't really watch Fox because we know what Fox is going to say. I mean, I read some of the captions, on the bottom of the screen, but they're just going to be playing to the Fox supporters and doing everything they did with regards to, like, Tucker Carlson did with the insurrection. Like, oh my God, the deep state is coming down on the innocent Donald, and this is overreach, and they're going to compare it to third world countries, or like Venezuela, or the worst communist dictators in history like Stalin or Mao or whomever else would come to mind, and yeah, pretty predictable. And then if you're going to watch CNN, it's going to be a bunch of Looney Tune morons that are presumably experts with Anderson, Zoolander, Cooper, basically asking silly rhetorical questions when they create some sort of like ping pong between Trump Republican supporters, faux supporters, and those on the other side, and then everything that leads to, which is a waste of time. And I would say MSNBC is extremely predictable, but I'd love to watch MSNBC as it relates to Trump, because they're all things Trump 24/7, and everything that they do on Trump is indicative of what I have, but they're like his tiny hands in comparison to everything else. And the whole point of all of this is, yeah, media is fake media. And the big part of all of it tonight was, this is almost like a celebration, particularly if you're watching MSNBC, of like the triumph of the rule of law. Now, meanwhile, I mean, we're literally indicting him on the most ridiculous of all charges, quite frankly, based on, hush payments to Stormy Daniels, aka is it Stephanie Clifton? I can't remember what her real name is, but in context to his fixer, Michael Cohen, literally went to jail for the exact same thing that they're now indicting Trump about. And there might be more to it. I think we're not going to find out all the details until Tuesday when they open the sealed indictment. But that the only reason Michael Cohen went down is because it was while Trump was president, and they kept referring, the Department of Justice kept referring to Donald Trump as what defendant, what they say, the defendant one. And, of course, it was Bill Barr, who was Trump's handpicked attorney general. And ultimately, they came down on Michael Cohen and not Trump. And now Trump is talking about how the Department of Justice is weaponized against him when he did the exact same thing to Michael Cohen and held himself out against everything, that obviously his fixture was working out for him. Now, the amazing thing that, in context to all of the stuff that's going on, I think the most really interesting part about all of it is that, you've got everybody from Jack Smith to Fonnie Willis to Letitia James, and now, of course, Alvin Bragg. 4 of the 5 are African American. And I think the ultimate irony is, as it turns out, if Trump does get arrested and fingerprinted and go through the whole process into booking, it's going to be in the same police station in Manhattan that the Central Park 5 went through, that Donald Trump back in the 80s took out full-page ads to convict and indict and offer some pretty horrific things. I don't even want to go there, because I almost said, did he offer someone to, I don't even want to go there. But, if you don't know who the Central Park 5 is and Donald Trump's role in it, I mean, there's a fantastic documentary on Netflix that when I watched it, it absolutely just wanted my head to explode. These kids got set up in a rape conviction that they were innocent of. And Donald Trump stoked the flames of everything happening in media and got these kids convicted, in addition to a corrupt prosecutor and other things, where these guys went to prison for a crime that they didn't commit. And the horrors that they experienced in that process were beyond, unfortunately, anything we're ever going to see Trump go through. But it would be maybe a bit of karma, like they've said tonight, to see him in that particular situation. Um, Look, the the things that I watched tonight, initially from Ari Melber and Joy Reid, some of my notes were like, for example, Claire McCaskill, former senator from Missouri, um, her whole thing was that she thinks that Bragg and the DA's department in Manhattan need to turn down the volume. Just be professional, be smooth, don't engage with Trump, be very quiet because she's literally afraid of MAGA Nation. And I'm thinking to myself, I have watched on MSNBC, 24/7 Trump filled in the airwaves to improve their ratings, and the whole thing was built towards all of these things that Trump should be indicted on for like years. And now when he is, it's like, let's subdue it. I thought that just revealed just a ridiculous sort of paradox, if you will, of people that on the one hand want to see justice and the rule of law, but on the other hand want to kind of water it down, meter it down so that it doesn't lead to what? Some sort of violent reaction? Wouldn't you love, and I was just thinking about this as I was talking about the Central Park Five. What if Trump literally got the same sort of attention that we've seen African American youth get from the police over the course of the last, I don't know, going back to Rodney King, right? I mean, even though, could you just imagine if Trump was black and a regular person doing the things that he does, like holding a gun or a bat to the DA who is prosecuting him, a picture and send that and then call him an animal, and then of course all of the other things that came with it, that he's like a puppeteer, a pawn of George Soros, the Jewish guy financier in the murky shadows that actually has all the control, right? I mean, if Trump was anywhere near the kind of regular person in the United States, he certainly wouldn't have a mouth like Trump. He would be something that we would see on some sort of feed, that we see all the time in YouTube, and people horrified because it wouldn't be pretty. Let's put it that way. But one thing that was really interesting after I found McCaskill make that kind of really, I don't know, weak sort of proclamation, Reverend Al Sharpton, who's been, kind of a nemesis of Trump for 5 decades, and they go way back. I mean, between their days in Brooklyn and Queens and being in the public and debating about all of the stuff from the 70s and the 80s and so forth. He did make some interesting comments. He said that, what's really going to get Trump more than anything else is that, he was always an outsider to Manhattan, to the major players. He wasn't part of the upper crust. And ultimately, when he got the presidency, that was this sort of elevated sort of levity for Donald Trump, where it was like, look at me now, suckers. I am the guy who has arrived. And now he's going to go back to Manhattan, but to be, arrested and get a mugshot, right? And everything that comes with that. We'll see how that turns out. But yeah, that to me would simply be something I think Trump would have to, unfortunately, something that could snap, his sort of aura that he's been walking through the raindrops forever. I think that one would be heavy for him to actually to deal with. But after that, the thing that was predictable, but something that I know is going to be a little sensitive for some people, but I've got to address it because this is going to be the undercarriage of what mainstream media is going to do, and it's going to sell tickets and eyeballs to this grand show and everything that represents for the next however long this plays out. Not to mention, of course, it's going to take forever to get into court and go through the grand jury and everything else in the trial. But all of the other indictments coming down the pike, in Georgia and in Washington D.C. and for everything else. I mean, this is going to take the media's attention. I mean, on overdrive all the way through the next presidential election. There's no question about it. And I honestly think that serves both the Republicans and everything that Trump's purpose is, as well as mainstream media. Let's not forget that it was Les Moonves, the president of CBS, who famously said, my God, Trump is great for ratings. And he gave him like $70 million of free airtime. And the same goes for Jeff Zucker at CNN. They both made Trump the centerpiece of this insane political circus and everything that came with it. And, Mr. I'm trying to think of a show on NBC, The Apprentice, right? And You're Fired in context, everything else. It was a show. And Trump went to the ends of the earth with this, and they created Frankenstein, hence I call him Chumpenstein. But the thing that, Joy Reid and at this point, Eric Weissman, during that show this afternoon started talking about or Alan Weissman, was that, they were really picking up on all of the stuff, between Trump talking about, Alvin Bragg as an animal and everything that constitutes, and then tying him to the anti-Semitism of a Jewish financier, George Soros, right? And how that's playing, and actually being worried about that. I mean, they made, they sort of reverted back to the 80s in terms of this was kind of these tropes back in, not the 80s, the 50s, when African Americans were coming up through the initial civil rights, as well as Jews had already broken through the glass ceiling sort of thing. And, there were these horrible tropes of the day, but here we are in 2023, okay? And the thing that I'm going to say that's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable, but this is a truth we all have to come to grips with, okay? First of all, an African-American president, Barack Obama, and his African-American attorney general allowed Wall Street, which is made up of a lot of Jews, quite frankly, get away with the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history. Everybody's talking about, the law, and we're a nation of laws, and no man's above the law. And I'll get to that in a minute, because they also contradicted themselves for the last several hours, that I heard at least. But in context to this sort of identity thing, is it horrible that Donald Trump would revert back to what anybody who has seen Trump come up through this whole thing through MAGA and know his history of his father, who was part of the KKK, and then Bannon's, America, Make America Great Again, and everything all of that stuff came from the KKK. And Fred Trump was very either involved with the KKK or, I don't know, maybe that's not the word, sympathizer to the KKK. In either case, they were, the Trumps, indicted, I think, and convicted on all sorts of predatory scenarios in terms of their apartment buildings in Queens going back to what, the 60s and the 70s? They're as racist as it gets. Is it horrible, these tropes and what they're involved with and what they're saying? Absolutely. Does that make us not want to be aware of the fact, or they're untouchable, an African American? And the African American part isn't important to the understanding that the Obama presidency let Wall Street get away with bearing, most notably, 60% of African American household wealth. African Americans were predated. They were targeted. I have evidence of Wells Fargo and Chase and others that had inside, processes where they taught their brokers to target. And I've got this information that the goddamn Federal Reserve had this information, where they were using predatory lending that led to straw buying and all sorts of horrific scenarios that destroyed the African American gains that took place through all of the, banishing of redlining and all of those things that took place with all of the systemic racism of our entire history up until the civil rights sort of era that, then it created more opportunity for African Americans pretty much starting from the late 60s on. It was never perfect, but this was a reversal of that. And the biggest betrayal I can ever possibly think of under those circumstances is an African American president and an African American attorney general that let the criminality of Wall Street destroy millions of African Americans. And that was just the beginning. And that's what I believe created Donald Trump, or the opportunity for Donald Trump to usher in this incredible insanity. And it's part and parcel to why I always tell you corruption births fascism. But so here we are with this whole case, and it's like we're going to go at least on one side of the fence. We'll never see it on Fox, but we'll definitely hear about it from CNN. We'll definitely hear about it in the New York Times. We'll definitely hear from it in the Washington Post and MSNBC and the rest, PBS and so forth, NPR, they're all going to touch upon this horrific sort of behavior, unacceptable behavior of Donald Trump, you know, saying the kinds of things that he does and threats and trying to get literally a race war stirred up because of this with, these African Americans that are in positions to indict him and actually do their job, unlike what Eric Holder did to Wall Street. But in this particular case, what I'm demonstrating to you is, although Trump is completely guilty, in my estimation, of everything and then some, he's still at the very best a mid-level player, and possibly an engineered distraction. I'm not sure. If it was CIA-like, could they be that brilliant to pull this off, or are we just this stupid in our country, and is our media just this stupid? I think it could go either way, quite frankly. But in either case, I'm not really going to hold back from that sort of commentary. And like you've heard me say before, if you've listened to any of my truth bombs, thank God everybody on Wall Street's not Jewish. And thank God I know a lot of the prosecutors and a lot of the great people on the right side of this that were Jews. So what I continue to tell you is you can't, identify one group or, race, creed, whatever. Everybody was involved with it on both sides, good and bad, right? But let's not play in an identity card or elevate it above all else as something symptomatic of just this being Trump-centric. It's a much bigger scenario than that. And we have to really wrap our heads around this, and we can't pretend otherwise. Otherwise, everything else is bullshit, because it will turn into a, I don't know, maybe limited civil war at best. I think most Americans are too lazy to have a civil war, to be honest with you. But let's just say there's some violence that comes out of it. I'm sure a lot of it will be attributed to this. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if one of the reasons why the MAGAs, don't want any common sense gun regulation is maybe they're hoping some freaking derelict, insane person picks up a gun and goes and starts shooting people. That's kind of what they want, right? Some deranged lunatic that there's no regulations on people buying guns, and they're like, have at it, man. Let's blow this shit up. That's really kind of what they want to do. I digress, but it just the idea came to my mind. So the next up was, of course, Chris Hayes, and Chris Hayes is a pretty smart guy, but at the same time, he plays by the corporate cuff, if you will, and was there anything that, I guess, the good stuff that they were talking about was really just the fact that MAGA and Trump and the Republicans and McCarthy and all of these other sort of scenarios are like Donald Trump is being targeted, by an unfair, corrupt system in this whole thing, when they're literally demonstrating that he's being indicted on the exact same crime that his fixer was indicted upon by his Department of Justice. That to me is absolutely hilarious, and you can't make this shit up. Moving forward, I just heard a lot of comments that this proves that the whole system should be honest and accountable. Really? The whole system should be honest and accountable. What do I bring you day in and day out? Revelations that the entire system is a lie. That the entire judiciary allowed tens of millions of illegal documentation fraud, of which I learned today that I've got more and more evidence of a judge in South Florida covering up more and got busted, which I'm turning on to one of my key journalistic somebody I've got a relationship that I hope blows this thing wide open. But the judiciary has been allowing all of the stuff that Trump is guilty of with servicers and foreclosure mills to the tunes of millions for the last 13 years. Again, thank you, Donald, because what you're doing is magnifying what exactly is illegal. And now I'm talking about, documentation fabrication and business fabrication on documents, which is going to be one of the felonies that he's indicted on, particularly in the Southern District of Manhattan by Alvin Bragg, right? Or the DA of Manhattan. And that's illegal, and it's a felony, and it's beyond your comprehension thick in terms of what foreclosure mills, attorneys, and servicers, that were used in foreclosures have done in millions of cases, changing the documents to prove their case, to change standing, to buy or not to buy, to steal homes that they didn't have any right to collect on the debt, because that's how completely insane things got in the aftermath of the 2008 great financial crisis. Now, there was a bit of a surprise after Chris Hayes, Miss Once a Week, $30 million a year gal, who usually now just appears on Mondays. Rachel Maddow, it's such an important night. Rachel Maddow shows up, and we know it's important because, of course, she's down to 1 day a week, but she came on and she played it down, everything that's going on, because she wanted to make everybody understand that the process is going to be boring. It's going to take a long time for this trial to unwind. Trump has many attorneys. They're going to be able to do their discovery, which is another aspect of what doesn't happen for regular people. Rachel Maddow and her guests, and also during Chris Hayes, made the point, their guest, that this is how the rule of law works. Donald Trump's going to have his day in court, and everybody gets discovery. That did not happen to millions of people in the illegal fraud closure betrayal of our judiciary that destroyed tens of millions of people. They didn't allow discovery. They didn't have the investigation. They didn't show the illegal documentation that I'm telling you happened in millions upon millions of cases that I have. And yet, here we are talking about the laws about honesty and accountability and doing it by the book, and everybody's going to have their day in court, and discovery. That doesn't happen. It's going to happen because of all the lights and everything and cameras on this particular case. But again, it just hyper focuses on one person when I'm talking about something that is involved millions of people. And that's not an exaggeration. In fact, I'm probably understating it. Who knows how many millions of people actually went through this situation, but that's what undergirded the entire thing. And that's what I'm trying to get you to understand and rise in unison to purge. So they pointed out also that it's possible, and this is going to be real fun if this happens, that, Florida's Governor DeSantis might not play ball, and if Trump is forced to go be arraigned, that Florida's not going to take part of that. Florida, the governor of Florida, is not going to use the police force and arrest Donald Trump if he chooses to hang out down in Florida. So it'll be a big showdown, and this on top of Trump making fun of DeSantis and competing with DeSantis, but DeSantis just going over the top with all of these incredible, let's go back 100 years sort of laws in the state of Florida and everything that's going on there. And, and of course, DeSantis knows exactly what he's doing. This guy's like a graduate of Harvard Law and everything else. And, the fact that he might not actually play ball could become significantly problematic. And I guess we're going to find out on Tuesday. But I will tell you, going back to Florida, that DeSantis has been involved with handpicking judges that have been allowing all of this documentation fabrication to happen with the complicity of the courts in Florida on behalf of the financial system. So, of course, Trump's going to hide out in Florida. This has got to be one of the most corrupt states in the entire union. And by the way, owned by Bank of America, from what I understand. It's unfucking believable. And, moving forward, it's like, they were talking about how all the different people that are associated with Trump had already gone to jail, and that, the CFO went to jail and he got busted on crimes of tax evasion and, all sorts of business documentation fraud. And it didn't move the needle for the MAGAs. Because the MAGAs are stupid and they don't give a shit about anything except for the South will rise again or some sort of fascism. Because they don't fucking care about anything about America and liberty and justice for all. They care about destroying it to have some sort of hey, this is my country and everybody's going to be working for me. I mean, again, corruption births fascism. That's what this whole thing is about. And it's not about the supremacy of law. It's about literally cherry picking law to go after somebody so obviously low hanging fruit like Donald Trump that should be a slam dunk, should have been a slam dunk a long time ago. Feels like it's been drawn along here to keep everybody's attention so that you don't know what it is that I'm telling you. That the entire financial system destroyed a generation and got trillions of dollars for doing it and no prosecutions. Which, of course, I slammed on the New York Times earlier today because I'm like, they're selling you fucking swampland in Florida that they're pissing on your head telling you it's rain. And I just happened to do that the day that it turns out the war has begun and God is dead, sort of thing. With Donald Trump being indicted. But again, it's one guy. Moving forward. Now, the guy that I always enjoy. Oh, by the way, Rachel Maddow did point out, though, and I have to admit, and this caught me off guard. I forgot about this. Former Texas Governor Rick Perry actually ran for the presidency while he was being under criminal investigation. So, yeah, it wouldn't be the first time in recent U.S. history that somebody running for president could be potentially under criminal investigation, right? And, lo and behold, of course, he's out of Texas. So, hey, go figure, right? So then Lawrence O'Donnell comes on and, it's been pretty clear that he's been preparing for this moment for a long time. And, man, he was on fire tonight. Some of the things he said, he was referring to Donald Trump as criminal defendant Trump, which I know he was getting a big kick out of. And, that everyone is trumpeting the rule of law supreme and this whole opportunity is proof. But he and a couple of his guests, I think it was Swalwell, were talking about House Majority Leader, Speaker of the House, McCarthy, is apparently looking to incite violence, and I'm sure Marjorie Taylor Greene. And where do you think this guy George Santos is going to fall on this? Not to mention Jim Jordan and the rest. I mean, that's all pretty predictable. But they did remind me. Swalwell reminded me, of course, once again, that in these myriad of indictments that are coming down on Trump from all of the different agencies, law enforcement agencies of the United States. One of the indictments that's coming through the January 6th committee is, of course, the criminal referral, which is the end all be all of their investigation, that Donald Trump is guilty of defrauding the United States of America. Yeah. Who would have thought that would be a felony, right? Fraud is not shenanigans, like Hillary Clinton once quipped. They're felonies. They're you go to jail, you go to prison. You have, if you're a banker, you have your entire career thrown down the tubes, and you get all of your money clawed back if the law actually worked, which it doesn't, because Donald Trump is being investigated for defrauding the United States. But the entirety of Wall Street, of which the New York Times propped up Jamie Dimon as a hero today for spearheading $30 billion bailout of New Republic Bank, and who knows what created the runs there, because I haven't gone deep dive on it yet. But I can tell you they set him up like he's the guy that actually figured out the mess in 2008 as it related to Bear Stearns. No, it didn't. The federal government pulled Jamie Dimon and Chase into it and gave him a guarantee to do it as a buffer to be able to use Federal Reserve Act 13.3 to illegally pump billions into that bailout to try to create the systemic contagion that came during the Lehman Brothers collapse. And then, of course, Paulson and Bernanke and Geithner use the canon of the Federal Reserve, which is Federal Reserve Act 13.3, to provide trillions of dollars of liquidity to backstop the thieves of Wall Street, the CEOs of Wall Street, that destroyed tens of millions of people doing very similar antics that we're all celebrating Donald Trump just got indicted for. And yet nobody in media is talking about this. Why might that be? I mean, I think it's pretty obvious, because they want a double standard. Again, I want to see Trump get nailed. I want to see Trump wind up being like somebody we would see, in a I don't know, like in a Black Lives riot sort of scenario, where 10 cops show up and just pummel the living shit out of them. I'd watch that over and over and over. In fact, like Claire McCaskill said, we should turn down the volume on this to show, the integrity of law and all of these other things. Fuck that. I think we should trumpet it like crazy and show like, every chance I got. Like I would have, if Trump got arrested, I would have like a camera on him 24/7 and I would pay per view, anything that would happen to the guy. I would take a lot of pleasure in seeing him get his comeuppance because I do believe in justice. And I do believe in the integrity of law. And when you break the law and you do things at the level and the magnitude, you better fucking find, you better find the back of a cell instead of getting paid trillions of fucking dollars. Okay? That's really the major point. That's really the ultimate point. And then, I guess the last word on Lawrence O'Donnell's last word was none other than Donald Trump's niece, Mary Trump. And she couldn't help herself from kind of giggling a little bit. I mean, thinking about all of the ridiculous things that would happen if Lawrence O'Donnell wins and he is goading Trump to take the stand in his defense. Because Lawrence O'Donnell knows that Trump couldn't tell the truth if his life depended on it. And he knows that if they get him on the stand, the guy's going to just bloviate lie after lie after lie and just make matters worse because he's that much of an idiot. And they both kind of had a good chuckle about that. And I did too, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. But I mean, the takeaways ultimately, guys, look, the mainstream that created all of this hysteria and that we've seen nonstop about Trump, now they're asking us to turn it down. I think we should turn it up. I think we should turn it up to the point where it's kind of like this motif that I brought up a while ago. If I had the opportunity to be the president of the United States, I'd create a financial terrorist task force and I'd have them show up on Wall Street with water cannons, and I would wait until the CEOs came down with their attorneys and their security on their way to their Lincoln Town cars, and then I'd turn up the volume on the water cannons, and I'd freaking mow them down into the gutter where they freaking belong, like the rats that they are. And ultimately, I put that on pay-per-view. And I would do that with Donald Trump. Don't turn it down. This guy needs everything. I mean, who in their right mind would get away with putting a picture of themselves with a bat next to a DA that's prosecuting them? Could you imagine being that stupid? Could you imagine what that would do to the normal person? Not to mention a black person. If this guy Trump doesn't get what's coming to him, we're in deep shit. But I guarantee you that's exactly what the MAGAs and everybody who's behind this, like the Koch brothers and the Mercers and Sheldon Adelson's, whatever he bequeathed, whatever his vertical is, and then of course Blackwater on the rest of them, they've all been angling in on this. They've all been waiting for this. I think this has been part of the design forever. Hey man, let's get Trump to run for president or re-election after he is guilty of everything that he did, and let's see whether or not the law can come down on him, because if he doesn't, then we're going to have basically the new Confederacy and the South will rise again. That's what they're banking on. And it's insane to me that, again, going back to my earlier proclamation, that's like, oh yeah, it is horrible. It is really horrible that, Trump would make these obnoxious, insanely offensive, and I just can't stand him for a lot of the things that he does. But this specifically, calling a DA, Alvin Bragg, an animal. And, that he's being puppeteered by a Jew. Meanwhile, his son-in-law, it was on the front page of the New York Times today, too, just made a couple of $100 million from doing business with a couple of countries in the Middle East. I wonder how much commission Donald Trump's going to get for that, for taking one for the team. Seriously. Not to mention Steve Mnuchin. My point is, there's a lot of Jews that are close in the Trump orbit that are actually playing ball by Trump's rules when he's trying to create, the next anti-Semitic freaking fireball. I mean, how stupid do you have to be these people? Not to mention all of the denizens on Wall Street that are guilty as hell from all races, creeds, genders, and everything else. It's not identity politics. Let's not get caught up in that. Let's laugh at Trump. Let's laugh at the MAGAs. And let's unite all of us who aren't like that to purge corruption and not get caught up in that kind of sort of thing, because we do have to have a law, a country where the law is supreme. If democracy is going to reign supreme, if the law has got to reign supreme, which means that we have to have the integrity of law. And ultimately, I think the final thing that I wanted to say was, throughout all of this too, I get to see kind of a tweet from Matt Taibbi, and Matt Taibbi is like, oh yeah, hey, what a great way to start season 9 of Trump, right? Yeah, but come on, Taibbi. I'm starting to think that Taibbi went down to the crossroads to make his deal with Elon Musk because they're going to bring in the Twitter files as some sort of evidence to MAGA Nation that, look, the deep state is actually trying to frag Trump, and here's other elements of what they did. Meanwhile, why isn't Taibbi talking about Jamie Dimon on the front page of the New York Times being the hero of saving an economic collapse, given what he knew about the great financial crisis? Look, Taibbi left the lane wide open. Fine. Nobody in media is telling you the truth. Fine. Which means the only place that you can get it is right here. And ultimately, my God, just think about how much you pay in subscriptions. Just think about how much you pay to get lied to every single day. What I'm asking you to do is to join me on a populist tidal wave crusade to purge corruption. If you want to live in a country where this insanity reigns supreme and where the bad guys get away with trillions of dollars and where, everything is upside down, inside and out, you say black, the other person says white, whatever, everything is just a buffoon circus of lies. If you want that and you want to live in that country, by all means, do not join what it is that I'm asking you to do. Go, off the cliff with everybody else or into the sewer with all the vermin. For the rest of you who want your country back, we've got to create a tidal wave populist tidal wave to purge corruption. So that you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, who believes in integrity, who believes in dignity, who believes in liberty, who believes in sustainability, merge to create unity to destroy, to defeat tyranny, which is all this shit is. Second verse, same as the first. It's just this ongoing, I made this reference a couple of days ago. One of my favorite films, ironically, of course, came out of Miramax, which was executive produced by Harvey Weinstein and everything that means. But of course, it was Chicago the musical. And the entire purpose and the premise and the theme of it all was, hey, do the razzle dazzle, right? Razzle dazzle them. It was Richard Gere, the fabulous attorney that pairs up with the murder queen to get her off of Murder Row, and it got all of the attention of the newspapers. They sold newspapers, everybody does a dance, and they move on to the next one. It's a show. That's what this whole goddamn thing is. That is not to say Donald Trump's not guilty. The fact is he was guilty of so much before he ever got in, even anywhere close to running for the presidency. When I've hit the rewind in my mind, I swear to God, all of this stuff seems oddly engineered. All of it seems peculiarly puppeteered. I don't know if anybody could be that unbelievably brilliant and so far ahead that they can control all of the outcomes. I think that's an impossibility, but it does seem weird. It just seems so weird that Donald Trump could be on trial for almost everything, including potentially selling secrets, which could be nuclear secrets, to the Saudis. If it turns out that's the case, that brings 9/11 into the whole fucking fold. It's because, think about it, Donald Trump is the representation of the absolute worst of us, right? So if Donald Trump is doing deals with Saudi Arabia and his son-in-law and his former Treasury Secretary with Saudi Arabia, and I know, and we know, and it's public, that Saudi Arabia was deeply, deeply involved with having material assistance to the Al-Qaeda hijackers, and the FBI knew they were in our country. I mean, my God, right? And so 9/11 happens, 3,000 souls perish on that brutal day, and then we have 20 years of war. And yet, nobody asked the question, what the fuck were the Saudis doing? I mean, it's the most obvious question in the world. And so what does Donald Trump say last summer during the Live Golf Tour that he holds at his golf course at West Bedminster in New Jersey? He said, nobody got to the bottom of 9/11, so what are you going to do? He is the ultimate expression. And then again, the big lie. I'm going to say this because nobody in mainstream media will tell you this. Okay, so when we're talking about documentation fabrication on business fabrication, Donald Trump is involved with control fraud his entire business career. That's all on display in our work at www.thecon.tv. There's brokerage fraud. There's appraisal fraud. You increase the level of the square footage of your houses and the value of your house, because you get loans against that the banks that are doing business with you, in this case with Donald Trump, was Deutsche Bank, who was laundering money, of course, for Putin. And again, for anybody looking into that, that would be treason. And then ultimately, he's like, whatever, I'm making billions of dollars on this. I've got it, my loans intact. This is where all my wealth comes from, even though he's not paying his taxes. And, I don't think he ever paid taxes now that I think about it. And then, who knows who he's greasing and who he's, playing ball with, and how many, other Stormy Daniels there are out there and that sort of thing that he'll never be held accountable for. But, all of these things in his business practice, which are going to be on display in, the business forensic accounting of the documentation fraud, that he's being indicted upon right now, the entire system of Wall Street was doing the exact same thing, only monumentally bigger. Like I told you, in the con, we show you Richard Bowen, who tried to stop $90 billion a year, $80 billion a year of illegal reps and warranties and toxic securities that were going to blow up the world. Then nobody would listen to him. And then what did we do after the whole thing collapsed? We gave the guys that did it and covered it up and destroyed everybody else, we gave former Treasury Secretary, Goldman Sachs executive, CEO, Robert Rubin, $126 million, and then Citigroup got $3 trillion. And from what I understand, they're about to blow up again. They've got all sorts of derivatives in Europe on this next phase. That I think we're going to get pretty close to another financial calamity during this whole mess with Trump. And then moving forward, I guess I could just go on and on and on. And this trial is going to go on and on. But again, in closing, people, understand what I'm telling you. If you want to live in a corrupt civilization, which isn't a civilization, if you want to live in a corrupt fascist state that has more pain to more people, please do me a favor. Just go away. Ignore me. I'm not your guy. If you want to defeat those people, then let's get busy getting busy and join us, because you're spending money everywhere but on the future of your company, your country. You have to invest in an operation, a foundation that's going to be able to provide the truth when everybody else is lying. And the bottom line is, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a podcast that brings this information day in and day out with all of the professionals that are going to blow this thing wide open. And if we can get enough investors moving forward, I'm going to create a barnstorming, revival tour with all of the information that I have, and a multimedia presentation that is going to blow the shit to high heaven, on a tour that goes from Seattle to LA to Phoenix, all the way through the Great Southwest, Texas, up all along the way through the Yellow Brick Road to DC and Manhattan, and we're going to change the world. We're going to change the world. We're going to change the United States. We're going to save the United States. We're going to get this truth to the millions of people that need to have it, and we're going to win. And we're going to win because you're not going to allow this to happen anymore. You're not going to be a tool in the full circus. You're going to rise, you're going to roar, and you're going to revolt. That's what together we can do. If millions of us come together in a tidal wave resurgence to purge corruption. It's exodus out of bondage and through the misery of slavery, of lies and deception, to the resurrection of the American dream. My name is Patrick S. Lovell, and failure is not an option. Onwards and upwards.